The two girls hunched over the phone book and paged past the front matter. The sketch of the long-distance operator, in her tight perm and headset, ready to connect a Brooklynite to Detroit or St. Louis or even San Francisco. The warning that it was a misdemeanor to fail to relinquish a party line in an emergency. They flattened the book at page 694, where the J section turned into the K section. Carole wanted a name that sounded like Klein. K, one syllable. We were very systematic, Camille recalls. Line by line, column by column, they looked and considered and eliminated. Con, calb, camp. Somewhere between Kern's funeral home and Kasilovsky's trucking, there had to be the perfect name. Or, failing that, an okay one that didn't sound ethnic, to transport the young tunesmith to her longed-for destiny. Best friends for 2 years now, Carole and Camille had walked the 4 blocks to Shellbank Junior High every day. Now they made the longer trek to James Madison High School, where the sons and daughters of lower-middle-class Jews, Italian families like Camille's were a distinct minority, roiled with creative energy. So did the kids from Madison's rival, Lincoln High, and those from another nearby high school, Erasmus Hall. The cramped houses from which these students tumbled each morning were the 50 years later counterparts of the tenements of the Lower East Side, where hard-working parents had sacrificed to give their offspring the tools to make culture. Musical culture, especially. In fact, so alike were the two generations that, today, Camille Cacciatore-Savitz's most lasting impression of the interiors of those small houses? Every house had a piano. To not have a piano, it was like not having a bed in those houses, she marvels, uncannily echoing what a Lower East Side settlement house worker wrote in a 1906 report. There is not a house, no matter how poor it be, where there is not a piano or a violin, and where the hope of the whole family is not pinned on one of the younger set as a future genius. But there was a difference. Those young Lower East Side pianist-songwriters had romanticized high society top-hatters and New England white Christmases. Their World War II-born Brooklyn counterparts, Carole and her peers, with their opposite sense of romance, would soon be extolling the humanity found within the very kinds of tenements those earlier songwriters had struggled to escape. The piano in the small Klein living room was always in use by Carole. The commercial tunes that sprang from her fingers combined the rigor of the classical music she'd studied with the wondrous Negro sounds she was absorbing at the Freed shows and on the radio. Carole's father helped her record them onto demos, but aiding his daughter's career dream didn't make him any less proprietary toward her. Carole was expected to steer a clear path from high school to college, where she would stay 4 years, obtain her teaching credential, and get married. No crazy surprises. In civil service Jewish families, people were mention, substantial, sensible. This was 1956. Mr. and Mrs. Ricky Ricardo had separate beds on I Love Lucy. Dissemination of information about birth control to married women was a crime in some states. Every word of 17 magazine was vetted by a pastor. In garment factories, union inspectors checked skirt lengths before job lots were shipped to department stores. Elvis may have been singing, Jack Kerouac writing, and James Dean's movies still being shown even after his fatal car accident, but there were few female analogues. Doris Day pluckily kept wolves at bay. The Chordettes crooned like estrogened Perry Comos. The 1920s had their flappers. The 1930s, their fox-stole-draped society aviatrixes, cheerfully trundling off to Reno for divorces. The 1940s had Rosie the Riveter. But the deep middle of the 1950s had both the most constricted images of women and, until just recently, the worst